Did you have a good, what was I gonna say? Did you have a good reading summer? Is that what I meant?
I think
Is that it?
it almost sounds like you're promoting Goodreads. Did you have a Goodreads summer?
No, what is the phrase? Like when you have a good, like a summer of good books.
Good books. I think I did. Because,
No, I think we have to frame that again.
okay.
Can't use-
Did you have a good, did you have a summer of, I think I want to know what you have read this summer. Good, bad, great, all of it.
I have read all three categories, I think.
I think my really bad books of this year has been in spring, but summer was good. I chose good books. Summer and fall are my favorite seasons of the year. In the summer, I read very like easy books of authors I know I would enjoy and just gravitate towards books that have really good reviews.
I feel like sometimes I need a bad book though as a palate cleanser. If I read too many good books, I start questioning my taste. I'm like, do I just like everything? Like, what's wrong with me?
That's true.
Do you want
Hmm.
to start?
No, you start.
Okay, I'm trying to think of how to order this. I think I made like some notes. I should have made the notes when I was reading them, but I didn't. I'm gonna start with two of the more very recent books that I read, and then I'm gonna go in order of how much I liked them. This was actually a really good book, and I really liked it. This is Rachel Cusk's Outline. I took this
I've
with
seen
me.
this on shelves all the time, and it really, I
Such a
think, yeah, the cover is really good.
It's just one of those books that I thought, am I gonna like it? Is it gonna be one of those like too experimental books? But I actually really liked it. I read a lot of this on the beach. For me, this is a good beach read. It's not light and breezy, it's kind of quite heavy, but
Mm-hmm.
it felt still very readable. Something about the writing style was very sort of summer for me. Also, it's set in summer, so maybe I should do the blurb. Oh, it's a very long blurb. Okay, let me see. I should just read the first bit. But basically, it just says Outline is a novel in 10 conversations. Spare and lucid, it follows a novelist teaching a course in creative writing over an oppressively hot summer in Athens. So I think that's all you need to know, really. You don't know much about this main character. You never do. You don't get to know much about her. You mostly just go from one interaction to the next. So it starts with like her on the plane and someone she's talking to on the plane, and then that person is just going on and on and on about their life. She's hearing what they're saying, she's perceiving something, and you're just reading her own internal monologue, and then that person sort of talking at her. Yeah, it just felt very like a dream. Yeah, I've written that lots of bits that made me make you really think, because it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those books also that can just send you into like thought spirals, lots of like philosophizing almost in it. Yeah, not much happens. It's not like plot driven at all.
Mm-hmm.
If you expect that, then you're not gonna like it at all. But I think the atmosphere of the book is what made it for me. Yeah, I just oddly was able to just keep reading it. So I liked it. It was a good 4 star for me.
Is it? It's not part of a trilogy though,
Yes,
right? Because
it
it
is.
is. So is this the first book or is it just
No,
okay?
it's the first book, and I think in the second part you continue to follow her, and I think she's back in London. I think in the second, which I'm also excited about because I would love
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I can do the one that I read, the last book I read. I think you've read this, The Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid.
yeah,
I
yeah.
gave this a 3 star just because I read some really good books this summer. And this for me was good. I finished it fairly quickly, but I didn't feel much after reading it. I
Hmm.
feel like it didn't give me anything to think about. I feel like it almost felt a little incomplete. I didn't know the characters well enough after reading
Hmm.
the book. I feel like they could have done a much better job
Off
at
the top
that.
of my head, isn't this the book with the kid and the nanny, or like a
Yes.
babysitter?
Yeah, the babysitter, she's like an African American babysitter for a very white family. The mother is like this blonde author
Hmm.
and living in a predominantly white community. Again, this is a very big blur, but I can say a little bit. So, Alex Chamberlain is a woman who gets what she wants, and she's made a living showing other women how to do the same. So, she's shocked when her babysitter, Amira Tucker is confronted while watching the Chamberlains toddler one night in the aisles of their high-end supermarket. The store's security guard, seeing a young black woman out late with a white child, accuses Amira of kidnapping. It's essentially based on that incident and
Mm.
how that affects their relationship. I don't know. It didn't do much for me. It felt very incomplete for me.
Mm. To be fair, I don't
Uh,
actually remember what happens in the end.
Yeah, because yeah, if it was a very well written, structured story, for me, I think I like books where
Mm.
I know the characters really
Mm.
well after reading it. At the end of the day, I feel like this could have really been a very good book if they had gone into a little more detail on how, as a black woman, you actually feel. I feel like this character, she's very young. She
Mm.
doesn't really know how she feels. It doesn't go much into detail on how this incident made her feel,
Mm.
how this incident changed her. It seemed like at the end of the book there was no character development, even though so much happened. Okay, I give it a 3 star. It was an enjoyable read, good summer read,
Mm.
but it's not something that like blew my mind.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I may have listened to this one.
Mm,
I think it made a good listen. Like it was very
okay.
like easy to keep up with without being completely like mind numbing.
I
But
think it also goes a little into how this woman gets obsessed with protecting this black woman, and
yeah,
I found that a little bit weird. Like it touches briefly on like fetishizing black women, wanting to be friends with black women just because you're white and you think you need to show people that you're okay being around it. I almost felt fake, so that just
but
made
I
me a
think
little uncomfortable.
but I think that may have been intentional.
I'm sure people do, but I feel like they should have taken it. The
Ah,
ending could have been better. Nothing was truly resolved at the end of the book. I feel like they're both the same women. But yeah, three
without
star read, but not a bad read, but could have been much better.
Okay, my next book I'm gonna do. This is the most recent book I read. Small Pleasures by Clare Chambers. I'll be honest, I only bought this book because it looked so nice.
It looks so summery and good.
And look at the pages.
Oh my god, I've never had a book like this.
It's so nice.
It's beautiful. I love that.
So I bought this genuinely because it was like I was like last bit of summer. I just want something nice and light. And I saw this and it looked so nice. And it said longlisted for the Women's Prize 2021. Usually that means it should be a good book. Did not like it. I read the blurb, okay.
Yeah.
1957, the suburbs of Southeast London. Jean is a journalist on a local paper, trapped in a life of duty and disappointment from which there is no likelihood of escape. When a young woman, Gretchen Tilbury, contacts the paper to claim that her daughter is the result of a virgin birth, it is down to Jean to discover whether she is a miracle or a fraud. As the investigation turns her quiet life inside out, Jean is suddenly given an unexpected chance at friendship, love, and possibly happiness. But there will inevitably be a price to pay. So
Okay.
I thought that was like a fun premise. First of all, I love when books are set in London. Then this whole like weird virgin birth story. What's that going to be about? What I didn't expect this book to be was a romance. Right? Like it does say
There's no indication of that though in the.
yeah,
I
I guess
thought
it
it,
was like love a bit like in the end, but like that couldn't I thought it'd be like a side plot or something.
yeah.
I mean
I
I
thought
hope
it'd be more about the relationship between like the mother and daughter more.
yeah. But I mean there is that, but it's just
Okay.
yeah, I hope it's not a spoiler. Like I think you within the first like 25% of the book you realize that oh okay, this is some love story stuff. Um, I mean, it's not just that, to be fair. They are talking about other things. It was very readable, I will say that. I did read it faster than a lot of other books that I've read recently. I've written down what I liked and what I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
What I liked about it was the atmosphere. So, like London in the 50s, it felt very real. There's lots of like descriptions of her domestic life. I really like those sorts of things. Like, you really feel like you're there. Also, she is like this journalist, a working woman in the 50s was like more uncommon. And then what does that mean for her life? And she's taking care of her, like her mom. She lives with her mom and she's very old and she's take care of her. The characters were actually quite different, I guess, to have a protagonist who is in her late 40s. Even these other characters are not necessarily described as being the most attractive or anything, which I thought was quite refreshing. Very like real people. But I think that's about all that I thought there was to like about
So
it.
what's about the virgin birth thing, or would that be a spoiler?
No, she's investigating. Basically, this lady writes a letter to her saying, "My child, who's now 10 years old, was born of virgin birth,"
But
and
was that true?
that you
I mean,
find
it can't be.
it can't be. Obviously, it can't be.
Yeah.
But she's just investigating it, and she gets really entangled in this family. The romance is not the only thing. There was just
So who's the romance between the journalist and someone?
yeah, the journalist is a main character.
Okay.
I don't know if revealing who the someone is a spoiler. It does happen early in the book.
Is it the dad?
It's
Oh my god. That was easy.
like the only male character.
Yeah.
There's also like some very unnecessary, weird twists just to keep it exciting, I think. There were some very strange ideas. Some, again, spoiler, possibly, but like some random addition of like some queer characters that just got added for some reason, for like just convenient to the plot, and then were not developed, were pretty badly written. But it kind of was like a quick read, I guess. And
Which is funny because you would think that quick reads must be something you really enjoyed and wanted to like finish, but sometimes that's just not it.
I enjoyed those descriptions. I enjoyed being with the character, and like this guy works in some like small little shop somewhere in London. I really liked going to that shop,
Yeah.
seeing what was
Seems
around.
like she's good at setting the scene.
She's clearly a
But
good writer and a good storyteller. It's just that she made some very strange choices in this book.
okay. I'm gonna go for a book that I really enjoyed and I read at the beginning of summer. I think this was in May, and it's called An American Marriage
Hmm.
by Tayari Jones. I've heard a lot about it. It
So,
had some good reviews, and it was Oprah's 2018 selection book club. I really liked it. This was a 4 star for me.
oh, nice.
I'll read the blurb because I think that it's a very good blurb to describe what this book is about. So, a captivating love story that's also clear-eyed look at the effects of injustice in contemporary American life. Tayari Jones' novel gorgeously chronicles three people who are bound together and separated by forces beyond their control. So, as newlyweds, Celestial and Roy are living the American dream. He's a young executive and she's an artist on the brink of an exciting career. But after Roy's incarceration for a crime he did not commit, Celestial, bereft and unmoved, turns to childhood friend and Roy's best man, Andre, for support.
Okay.
As Roy's absence drags on, Celestial faces soul wrenching decisions about balancing loyalty with independence, desire with social and familial expectations, and what is right with what is fair and to whom. So it's not very love story esque as you
Mhm.
would expect. It's not a romance novel, which is
Mm.
something that would not be something I enjoy anyway. But
Mm.
I feel like it was very realistic descriptions of what it is like to be married to someone and then start having feelings for someone else. It's told from all three perspectives, which I found really enjoyable because you get to really know these three characters on their own
Mhm.
without the dependence of the other person's opinion of them. It talks about Roy when he's in jail. It talks about his wife outside and how she's feeling about it, and the letters that they share. So they show it has the letters as well in it. And then it also talks about Andre, who's his friend,
Mm.
but she ends up falling in love with him.
Mm.
And it's also about, again, being African American and how you end up in prison for something you don't do, which is very common here, unfortunately, even now. It's not a very, I've written, this is not a very like pretty read. It's not an enjoyable book. It goes into some pretty
Difficult.
heavy
Mm.
topics. And it's also not filled with some action. It's just more about how these characters have developed over the last 5 years while he's in jail. They are very well written characters. And I still remember each of them,
Mm.
after reading the book. You feel like you know these people. You
That
know what makes them like tick, you know how they feel about things, like, and it's just something that I've not forgotten even after like a few months.
that
So
sounds nice. Yeah.
yeah. Whatever happens at the end, I'm not going to spoil it, but you end up understanding the choices they make. And you're like, I get that. I get why that happened. Like you start to agree with it, even though it's a little unfair, but life is unfair. So
I'll try to do a good one now because I have
okay.
like a really, I'll do my 5-star read, and I think I did want to talk to you about this. So now is my to talk to you about
Yeah.
this. I read very early summer, and I
Mhm.
told you about it. It was
Yes.
Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Again, did not know what to expect because there's not doesn't I can read the blurb, but I think it's well known. Like everyone says about this book that the less you know about it, the better.
Hmm.
I can still read the blurb. If should I read the blurb and spoil it?
Yeah. Oh, does it spoil it though?
Yeah,
So I don't know anything about this book. It's been on my list and I've seen it everywhere.
I'll just show you the cover first of all. This is the cover, and I have the
Hmm.
hardcover and the inside. Like, look inside. If I
Is it
remember,
like that blue cover I've seen everywhere?
no, it's
Maybe that's a
black.
paperback.
Maybe. I think the paperback is blue. I have the hardcover. So that if I remember the sleeve, it's so beautiful.
Oh
Like,
wow.
uh,
It looks very like Greek mythology-esque,
yeah, because it
which I
does.
think it is.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, not really mythology, but you'll understand when you read it why you're getting that energy. Look at like the opening page.
Oh wow.
It,
That's very summary.
I know it looks similar, but it's not also. I mean, anyway, basically, you're with this character called Piranesi. You don't know anything about them. You don't know if they're a he or a she or a it or you don't know anything. And you're just kind of thrown into the story. When you open
Okay.
it, you just sort of, and it's one of those books that it's classified as, I guess, a fantasy, and I don't really read fantasy. I don't really like fantasy. It's just not something I read as a child, I think, which is why it doesn't appeal to me. I've
Yeah,
tried.
same.
I've tried, and there's some like I can appreciate them and I can say they're good and fun, but I don't feel like reaching for them. I just don't. So
Same.
I thought maybe this is gonna be one of those that I just sort of, but then because people said it was like a bit like weird and stuff, I was like, oh my God, I hate it. I thought, I'm
Hmm.
gonna try. I'm just gonna read like the first few, and then if I don't like it, I don't like it kind of thing. You have to go into it expecting to be a bit confused, but at the same time, like not skim read it. Like you have to just read every line and just picture it, even if it feels really absurd, because it is. It reads very absurd in the beginning. I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Oddly, for me, after I got through the first, like, maybe 30 pages, I started to really enjoy it. And I think it can go one of two ways. Either you're going to be like, this is weird and I'm bored. Because I did see some people in their reviews going like, it was so boring. What is this? And if you're bored, then you're just gonna be bored because there's lots of like, I don't know, like one example is there's lots of like directions, north and south and west and east and whatever. Like there's lots of like constant references to certain things like that. And it's gonna be there for a while.
Hmm.
I liked the world so much that I was like, I don't even care if nothing happens. I want to be here. I like this. Once you get into it, it becomes a bit of a page turner, for me at least.
Okay.
Essentially, you have to treat it like a bit of a mystery. But as you get into it, if you enjoy the atmosphere and if you're happy to keep solving the puzzle and looking at every sentence as a clue, then it
Hmm.
keeps engaging you. And by the half the book, I would say it follows a fairly conventional storyline. It could
Okay.
be it could be a movie. That's how I felt. It's very short also. It's not like dragged. I think if it was a bit dragged longer, it would have maybe been a bit boring. For me, it's like under 250 pages.
Yeah, that's a short book.
Yeah, like very precise to the point. I remember feeling very strongly when I read this book. I was just like, everyone should read it so I can discuss it with you. And then I
I'm
was like,
gonna read that next. It sounds so good. Like again, I've never heard someone's like review on it. I've only read or seen people reading it and being like, "Oh my God, 5 stars" on like Instagram story and stuff. I feel like reading it now. The next book I read was a fairly short book, and I gave it a 3 stars.
mhm.
So I enjoyed it, but it didn't do much for me, and that's Franny and Zoe
I really like this one.
by J.D. Salinger, but I loved the conversations. There were parts of it that made me laugh out loud, which usually I don't really do that with books. Yeah, and the conversations felt very real, something I would actually have with someone or my inner thoughts. But what I didn't like about it is just nothing actually happens. So there's two characters, they're siblings. One part of the book actually really liked like Franny's part, like the first part, like the girl's part,
Yeah.
way more than the guy's part. Zoe, I don't know, the guy, the sibling, the brother, and Franny is the youngest, I think. So the first 1/4 of the book is her part, and then 3/4 of the book is his part.
But she's also in it a little bit, right?
She's also in it, and it includes a conversation with her at some point. And I wish that this book was more about her in some way. I don't know. I just enjoyed her part a little bit more. But there's no plot to this book. That's something I need to tell people, that there's no plot. It's essentially just two conversations within this house, within this family, and that's it. Nothing really happens.
Yeah, no, it
So
doesn't.
that is something to keep in mind. I enjoyed some parts of it, which was why it was a 3 and not like a 2, but nothing that I would remember this book by.
For me, it blew my mind in a sense of I just thought it was a really good character study. I was just like, this is how you like do a really fleshed out character because they were so
Hmm.
like
Honest and open and real, yeah.
like the way it was written, the dialogue, including even the dialogue. I think you mentioned the
Yeah.
dialogue. I remember thinking that the dialogue is like top tier, the dialogue writing. I don't know if I was still studying literature and I was doing a thing on like character writing, I would probably
Yeah.
go to this book, you know.
Anyway, you have like what, one book? I think I'm done with my books.
Is my like my lips are getting dry so fast today. I have one last book. So this last book was something I had on my like TBR for a long time. I wanted to read it, and at some point in the summer, I thought now is a good time. And it is The Overstory by Richard Powers. It won the Pulitzer in 2019. It was also shortlisted for the Man Booker or the Booker now. The first of all, there's like an Anne Patchett quote that said, "The best novel ever written about trees." And really just one of the best novels, period. I heard a lot that this is like a nature book, it's lots of stuff about trees. And this is one of those books that gets like the most rave reviews. People love it. And the people that don't love it often talk about how it's a bit boring because there's lots of trees and plants and whatever. So I read it and I give it 3 stars, which is
Okay.
sad. I feel sad giving it 3 stars because it's one of those, right, that it's a very big book. It's like 600 and something pages. It's very accomplished, sure. I found it a little irritating, and not because of the trees at all. I loved the trees actually. Actually, let me read the blurb. An artist inherits 100 years of photographic portraits, all of the same doomed American chestnut tree. A hard partying undergraduate in the late 1980s electrocutes herself, dies, and is sent back into life by creatures of air and light. A hearing and speech impaired scientist discovers that trees are communicating with one another. An Air Force loadmaster in the Vietnam War is shot out of the sky, then saved by falling into a banyan. This is a story of these and 5 other strangers, each summoned in different ways by the natural world, who are brought together in a last stand to save it from catastrophe.
Okay.
So the book is in 2 parts. The first part, they're like just like short stories. The first part is just one chapter per character. There's 10 characters, 10 or 8 characters, I don't know, many characters. And you just
Hmm.
read just about them. They're growing up, blah, blah. And something happens to them that's related to some kind of like tree, or mostly I think it's related to a tree or the natural world in some way. And then the second half is basically how they all come together. And it is about like climate crisis and what's happening to trees. And I guess they're calling it catastrophe. What I liked about the book were the trees and the description. And I guess that the natural cause, it was a bit like, obviously it's devastating what's happening to the world. And you're reading that and they're trying to save it. And they show you a few different perspectives of people who are involved in this cause in different ways. And so these characters, some of them meet, some of them don't really, but they are connected to the story in some way. What I didn't like about it was the characters. The characters were so irritating for me. I don't know why.
All of them, like all 8 of them?
They were not all irritating, they just all felt very one dimensional. It's like the author was so invested in writing about the other stuff, which was really well done. But I don't think this is someone who necessarily cares for the character, or it's just the kind of story that doesn't appeal to me. Like, this is not how I like characters written. There was one character, this botanist called Patricia, that I really liked. And whenever her part came, I was like, oh, I like her. And there was a lot of tragedy in this book, like to a point where it was not realistic. I was like, so many bad, like all these people also in their short stories, everything ends with something horrible happening to them. Like, why so dramatic? Cause is
Almost unrealistic.
yeah, like the cause is
Yeah.
dramatic. Like it's true. Like, you know, the world we live in is not looking at the natural world the way it should. And I think there was
Yeah.
some really good ideas there that made me really think of like how humans interact with nature and the world and trees specifically, just how complex they are as beings, I guess. And all of that is lovely and wonderful, but the characters just kind of ruined it for me. It felt a bit tedious to read at times, so I was just pushing myself to keep reading, hoping that we'll move on to some character that I'm a little bit more interested in. I'm still glad I read it because it did make me interested in like trees, for instance, a lot more. So I'm still glad I read it. And it
Yeah.
did the job in that way for me. It wasn't the most enjoyable read and it was very long. So there were two other books I read. One of them I don't have, which was Anita Brookner's Latecomers. It was a good book. I think I gave it like maybe 4 stars, 3 stars. It was one of those, like very well written. It read a little bit like Franny and Zoe to me in the sense of like they like character studies, not so much plot. Yeah, good book, but if you want to hear about that, then you may want to go and watch the July favorites video, because I'm not going to go on about that. And the other book was this one nonfiction that I read, which was Scattered Minds by Gabor Maté, which is basically about attention deficit disorder. I gave this 5 stars. I think at the time I had not finished the book.
Yeah.
I did finish it and I thought it was fucking brilliant. If you have ADD, think you have ADD, or just want to literally just learn about development of the human brain from like when you're a very small child, I don't know, it just gave me so much to think about, like the environment, like nature versus nurture, all of those things. If you're interested in that kind of thing, it's a really good book to read. It's one of those that I like have made so many like little marks in, and I know I'll be going back and referring to it. The only nonfiction I read, and a good one.
Wow, you had 2 5-star reads this summer. The only other 2 books I read this summer was The Guest by Cline. Again, I spoke so much about it. Very stressful book, unlikable protagonist, but so fun, and you just want to keep reading more and more to figure out what happens to her at the end. I think this is very like plot driven book, definitely. So very fun read. And the other one is Taylor Jenkins Reid. Carrie Soto is back again. Love her writing. Her characters are very well written. Like I remember the main characters in all of her books. Very strong women, very relatable, like nothing too dramatic, very well written women. And that's always the main character. But also it's about the plot. So it's not just about the characters, but yeah. Really, really enjoyable book. I gave this 4 stars as well. But yeah, those were all my summer books. Let's get into cozy fall reading now.